Alright, this is going to be a pretty easy video. It's basically about hash maps and how you can use them to avoid if statements. This is simple enough to where, somebody who's been programming for a year or two probably already knows about it, but this wasn't something that was obvious to me when I first started using libgdx or using Java or whatever. So maybe if you've just learned about hash maps, but you don't, or you know only a little bit about them, but you don't know why they can be useful. Well, there's actually a million reasons why they can be useful, but this is like one small way that they can be useful that I think can help. So we know that a hash map is a Java thing, and really there's maps in every programming language. I think it's called dictionary in C#, and it'd be called something else. And we know that it takes a key, like an integer, and it gives us something back out. Whoops. Like a string, for example. So, anyways, and then we know how to declare a new hash map, right? So, if you've never used hash maps up much, they're basically just a map from a key to a value. You know that you can get something out of them by doing mapper.get, and you just put the key in, and you'll have it. You can also loop through them by like getting the entry set. But if you want to loop through a hash map, I suggest you just Google the syntax for it. It's a little bit of annoying. I usually even Google the syntax for it when I'm doing that. But you can loop through it just like the key set, just as if it were a regular list. Or like I said, you can access the keys through Git. You can also put something in by putting a key and then a value in. But what we want to use hash maps for, so we know what a hash map is basically. It's not scary. It's basically just a list that you can only access the values of by using a key, and it's very useful. Databases are sort of set up this way, and lots of uses. But how can you use them to avoid if statements? Well, this is a project I made the other day. It's just like a little dungeon game test thing. It's not very far in development, though I've done quite a bit on it just for the heck of it. What is it mad about? Oh, I had deleted some functionality at one time, and I guess I forgot to check if something was using it. Okay, so you can see my guy just walks around, and he can't walk into the walls. He can walk to a different floor or whatever. Cool. There's other things he can do too, but we don't really need to look at that. What's important though is when he tries to walk into another wall, some code happens, right, that stops him from doing that. And we're going to look at that code real quick because it's going to help us understand how we can avoid some if statements here. So when the player wants to move, we need to check what direction he's going in. So up, down, left, or right. And we need to know how much to move him based on that direction. Now, we could come in here and we could say if, the direction, I'm using an enum for the direction just so you know. It's not a huge deal. We can look at it real quick, but it's a really basic enum, up, down, left, and right. Now, we could use if statements for this, right? We could say if it's up, then make a vector 2 for that is 1 on the y and 0 on the x, and then if it's down, etc. And I feel like a lot of people who are new to programming tend to do this type of thing, but an easier way is just to have this hash map set up that takes a direction and gives me the correct vector 2, right? Now, along with this comes some initial trouble because I have to set this hash map up in a method that's called in my constructor, but that's fine, right? And then it's just done, and then you're not bogging down this method. And you can see I even reuse this up here for when I'm checking for an interaction. You're not bogging this method down or another method with a bunch of if statements. You're just saying, here's the direction, give me the correct one, no if needed. So this is the type of thing that hash maps like this, once again, this is just an enum. If you don't understand enums, they're stupidly simple. Just, Google them or whatever. Or maybe I'll do a video on them eventually and how they're useful. But yeah, you just set up the hash map with the values you want, and then it just gives them back to you when you want them. No if statements needed, right? It's that easy. And that's really all this video is about. Like I said, this is just one of the ways that you can use hash maps. I've used it like this a lot in this project to avoid if statements. Yep, you just put the value in and you get it back out. So this one was kind of a quick one. Maybe you can experiment with some hash maps yourself. Maybe you found this useful. Maybe you already knew about it. But either way, that's one way in which I like to use hash maps. So just to review, you set up the hash map. Then you just insert the values. In this case, up, down, left, or right. Then there's no need to check if it's up or anything. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know what I'm doing here, this consumer is basically getting notified whenever the player moves. This code is getting run whenever the player moves. If you want to understand this, I just did an events video. Just go to that events video and you'll know exactly what I'm doing here with this consumer. But just know that this code gets run when the player attempts to move. Anyways, and this other stuff's not relevant to the hash map conversation right now, though you can see an event being broadcast here. But yeah, and then when you need something, there's no need to check if it's up, if it's down, if it's left, if it's right. There's no need for a switch statement, any of that. Just stick it in the hash map. Hash map gives it back, gives you what you need out. It's it's like your own little mini database. You're like, hey, give me this, give me what correlates to this thing, right? Anyways, this is a quick one, but I hope somebody finds this useful. Like I said, this was not obvious to me when I first started making games. And I know that I'm doing this in libgdx, a game framework, but you could really use this to avoid if statements probably anywhere. So, there you go.